Hi, and welcome to All in Agile. We're here to explore the world of agility one conversation at a time. I'm Bernie, one of your Agile aces, and together with David, we'll be diving into the challenges, the wins, and hopefully the lessons that come with adopting an Agile mindset. Whether you're here to refine your skills, spark new ideas, or just listen in, we're so happy and glad you've joined us. Let's get started. Now, all right, today we are diving into a topic that many Agile teams encounter, not only Agile teams, but of course the ones that happen to work in Agile mindsets even more so, often without realizing it, the feature factory. You know the feeling? Churning out a feature after feature, sprint after sprint, and feeling being in that treadmill. David, you've experienced that before in many different roles. Let's start off. What is the feature factory actually?
Yeah, hello and welcome to our podcast. Very nice that we can continue with our journey here. So the feature factory is often a common of missing agility, of doing agility wrong, in a wrong way, of doing cargo cult Scrum, which is not so good. So what is a feature factory? For me, a feature factory is when a team works in sprints and in a Scrum setting, but doesn't reflect on the Agile values. So they only focus on the ticket per ticket, try to finish the tickets, and lose the contact to the customer, to the user, but also to the vision why they are doing it. So they are you can imagine a picture where the team is sitting in a big factory and tickets came in and features pop out, but no one is questioning how they are doing it and why they are doing it. So that's the feature factory for me. And it's often a sign that people don't live their responsibilities, like the product owner is not living the responsibility of the product owner, the Scrum Master is not doing his job right, and they are doing just pseudo Scrum or zombie Scrum. So, Bernie, do you want to add something to that
Yeah,
definition?
I totally agree with the definition. The point of the factory is right. You get as much focus on output as you can, right? In a factory, that's great. You want to have as many bicycles or cars or whatever you produce as possible. But I think a second term that we can really introduce at this stage is also the engineering mindset, because I do think that this really is contradicting the feature factory. In a factory, you don't really invest a lot of time in that requirement engineering, but you rather straight go for the fastest solution maybe, or the one that doesn't challenge the team, the one that's most comfortable, that you have the most experience with, and that goes really against the grain of an engineering mindset that usually has that balance between workable solution for the customer or the user, and on the other hand also to find new ways of challenging yourself as a team. And I think that's the key also in motivating a software engineering team anyhow. So I
Yeah,
just wanted to put that into the discussion as well.
yeah, that's a good point. And my question to you, Bernie, would be, what do you think? What effects does the feature factory have on the people working in the
Yeah.
feature factory? How do they feel? Um, what do you think from psychological standpoint and from a team spirit
Mhm.
standpoint?
Right.
What is the effect of it?
Yeah, it's devastating on multiple levels if you think about it. Firstly, the PO isn't happy because they have no tangible power and outcome focus in what they're doing. It's rather, garbage in, garbage out in the worst case. Uh, then secondly, the Scrum Master feels useless most of the time because the planning is redundant, the retrospectives are bland, the reviews probably non-existent, and the team, yeah, you can see it probably in their faces. Working in a feature factory is just not fun. And David, I see you're nodding, right? You have experienced that as well. How is your experience
Yeah.
personally working in the feature factory, and how did it reflect upon your motivation?
Yeah, it's so true. A feature factory, the real reason why a feature factory happens is that the people strive for speed and strive for delivering features, but they lose the connection to the real why they are doing their job. And this is the point where they get sad and maybe also mad, because they can't feel inspired anymore, and they don't know why they are doing it anymore. And this is also maybe the way out. So instead of focusing on the features and fast delivery of features, they should really focus on creating value and for whom they create value. So talking with users, considering the user needs. This is a major anti-pattern. When you see a team not connected to the user, and not talking with the users and not understanding why they need the feature, then you're
Right.
more likely to be in a feature factory.
Mm. Right.
So
And I just want to add one point to that because I think you already mentioned that creating value should be at the forefront and asking yourself the why. And I've seen it's almost a vicious circle, right? Because the better performing a team is, the more value you create, the more speed you also sometimes get. And therefore, it's really easy to lose that focus on the value that really brought you to the speed in the first place, and then focusing in on the speed aspect rather than the value. So high performing teams can fall into the slippery slope into also becoming a feature factory without even realizing it. So
exactly.
it's not only the low performing teams that struggle with being in the feature factory. It can also be the other way around.
Yeah, in my experience, it's exactly the opposite around. It's more likely to end up in a feature factory when you are very good in your job, because you focus on delivering fast, and good value. But yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's the old that old pickle, effectiveness versus efficiency, right? Firstly, you are really effective and outcome based, and then you just focus on the efficiency part of effectiveness and lose that overview, that value. Now, you already mentioned the why, which is terribly important also to get out of that feature factory. And you also mentioned cargo cult Scrum and zombie Scrum. So it has a lot of effects also on agile coaches, on scrum masters. What would you say is something that we can tangibly give agile coaches and scrum masters as concrete tips, examples that they can work with if they feel after listening to us that they might be in a feature factory team?
Yeah, first step, of course, is to recognize that you are in a feature factory. So if you don't have the awareness that you are in a feature factory, you can't work on it. That's clear. The next step would be to for Scrum Master would be to make it visible, to make it visible and understandable for everybody that in fact they are in a feature factory, and that it's only the tickets they focus on and not the user, for example, or the value or the vision why they are doing it. So question the status quo, and talk with the people and create alliances, um, create a need in your team to change. That would be the next step. And talk with the PO, talk with the maybe the Scrum Master if you are not the Scrum Master, but
Mm.
talk with the software developers and also with the stakeholders, because often the feature factory is a symptom to pleasure the system. So the
Right.
system around you demands that you work more in the feature factory style.
Yeah.
And you said a very important sentence before. If you focus on the value, you work on the right things, and you create speed in the right direction. And the feature factory is just speed, and the direction is not important anymore. And that's a problem. It doesn't matter if you can push out 7, 8 features if the features are not needed by the user or not really needed by the user, or don't feel good for the user. So
Right.
focusing on the value. and in the end help the PO, the product owner, to create a vision and a strategy, and with that create valuable, really good sprint goals, and that's the way out of the feature factory. So
Yeah.
on the one hand, work on the mindset and work on the contact with the users, but on the other hand, also work on the broader vision, on the goals. That's the 7 steps to come out of the feature factory.
Uh,
So Bernie,
yeah.
you also have experience with feature
Mhm.
factories. Another question for me would be, first step is to recognize that you are in a feature factory, right? So what are typical symptoms? What do you think are typical symptoms? Why or how can you experience that you are in a feature factory? What can you
Yeah.
observe?
Right. Yeah, it's terribly difficult, right, to find out if you are, because you can be in denial, and it's just a daily work thing. It's not something that you probably, recognize on a daily basis, but rather you have an implicit feeling about. So, firstly, look at the events, the Scrum events. Do they make sense? Do they feel valuable? If they don't, there might be a high chance that you are already in a feature factory. If you don't have reviews anymore, if you feel like your retrospectives are redundant, if the daily is well done in 30 seconds, could be a good thing, but can also be a terrible thing. If the Scrum Master is really pulling out of the team and feeling distant, that can also be a sign. Also, question yourself: do I feel motivated? And you already mentioned beforehand, David, I think really important point. Is there a need for change? Do you feel that there is already a need? And also turn it around. Is there a felt need for not changing in the team? Is it too comfortable? Is it just we don't have a vision, we don't have a purpose, we just do our work, uh, every day, and then we go home, and we don't see a necessary change on the horizon because it would be just too cumbersome. If that's a thing that you experience and your colleagues can experience, then it might be a dire need for a shakeup. So
Mm.
there's very subtle and gentle signs that pop up, and that you can either identify on an individual basis and also maybe by talking to your fellow teammates.
Yeah. I have some things to add maybe.
Mhm.
So you already mentioned the vision and the inspiration to work. Yeah, that's a great point. So I also have different symptoms you can observe in software engineers, in Scrum Master, and in POs. So let's start with the software engineer. If you're just working on requirements, and if the last time you have seen the user was last Christmas,
Mm.
then maybe it's a symptom that you are in a feature factory. So regular contact with your users and your stakeholders is very important. For example, not only focusing on requirements is a very good symptom, a very good anti-pattern you can observe. If the team discusses the user needs, for example, and how the user will feel, and they have a more user-centric focus, that's a sign that you are not in a feature factory, or that you focus a little bit more on the broader picture of the product. If the product owner has no power to decide things, and has no vision and no roadmap, that's a big no-no. That's a big symptom that you are in a feature factory and your product owner is just a backlog administrator. That would be a major sign. Or for example, if the Scrum Master is only focusing on metrics like velocity, that's also a major symptom. So you can observe the feature factory in multiple roles, in multiple dimensions. And if you have a lot of red flags, then it's a clear sign that you're in a feature factory. If one or two things are not so good, like I just said, then you are maybe in the way into a feature factory. So yeah, that's some points to come out of the feature factory. For example, a Scrum Master can work with the product owner and help the product owner to better and closer work with the customers, the stakeholders, and create the more inspiring vision. Or the Scrum Master could work with the software engineers so that they consider the user needs and they have a more user-centristic viewpoint in their work, using personas, for example. This could be some first steps out of the feature factory.
I do want to stress that point that you just raised regarding, again, the vision, the product strategy. Why is that so crucial? It's not only about doing it for the team or for the ego of the PO, or even worse, because the Scrum Master said so. Even worse, right? No, it's for one reason in a systemic way as well, because you get way more trust by management if you can then present your vision, your product strategy, and your timeline, your roadmap. You're not driven by managerial decisions then, but rather you have some leeway and some ground to discuss the situation with. Because management usually comes up with a strategy, right? They come in with the big strategy, and you as a PO maybe have no strategy, but rather in the feature factory just work on requirements, and the backlog is being sorted regularly. But that really gives you a really bad starting point for a discussion about how to strategize in the future. So it helps in both ways, right? To get out of the feature factory on a team level because it gives direction, and on the other hand, it really helps also management to gain some trust levels or heightened trust levels in your expertise, and you have some discussion ground. So I think that's a really important point.
Right. I also often observe that that the feature factory is also a symptom of a lack of leadership. So the Scrum Master, maybe a lead software engineer or one of the software engineers or the teammates, if you are not in the software project, and the product owner, they also have leadership tasks to do. And often it's a lack of leadership that someone needs to start with the why. And one recommendation I can give you is the book of Simon Sinek. Start with why, because when you start with why, you have all these effects you just said. You have a vision, you have a why you are doing it, and then you can inspire the management and inspire the team or the other team members to work on these things and to find a way out of the feature factory.
Absolutely. And as we are already on recommendations, I can also recommend L. David Arquette's book, Turn the Ship Around, which is direly needed, I think, especially in feature factory teams as well, when it comes to missing leadership, lateral leadership, right? Leadership is nothing that has to come from management per se, especially in teams that work on agile principles. It's really something that anybody can do. Take that on that helm of leadership at any situation. I just think one point that is very, very concrete, and I think that Scrum Masters and Agile coaches alike can use effectively is always metaphor, right? To shake people up, because especially in a feature factory, you doze off, right? It's just every day is the same, and if you want to wake people up, creating a picture is really, really effective. And I think the picture that I like to use with feature factories is, who wants to build a house, and you build that house and nobody checks if people want to live in it, right? So think about that. This is really connecting back to the user value, and work with metaphors that work in your field, in your area of expertise, that you feel comfortable with and that you can connect to your team. I think that a picture says more than 1,000 words, especially when it comes to connecting to emotions and shaking up the status quo, if you will.
So let's wrap up, and maybe that's a topic for the next podcast, to talk about leadership and the vision and how to create good visions and what effect does a good vision have and what effect does a missing vision has.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's a good topic for the next podcast.
Definitely.
So, Benny, what are your final thoughts on the feature factory?
Yeah, it's easy to get into. It's hard to get out of, But the first thing, as with many difficult things in life, is to recognize that you are in one, and you have to trust vision to pull you out of that feature factory. And I do believe that it's definitely possible. And we haven't discussed that yet, but I want to take this as a final thought from my end. If you get out of it, it really makes the team resilient, and that the team won't fall back into this trap soon. So it's worth it. Don't give up on your team. David, what would you say your final thoughts on the topic are before we
So
have?
my final thoughts are, if you want to have a more fulfilling work, you need to work in a customer-oriented, purpose-oriented way. So get out of the feature factory, and I mean that quite literally. Get out, get to your customers, get to your users, talk with them, show them your work. That's one great step. It's often not so easy. So often it's a systemic thing that the system requires you to do that. And for this, you need to start with the vision, but also need some smaller steps first. Small steps can also already help you introducing personas or something like that. That's something you can rather do easily. So yeah, that's my final thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, David. And thank you, everybody. Thanks for tuning into All in Agile. We hope today's conversation gave you new insights, sparked ideas, or even helped you take a fresh look at your own Agile journey. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with your team, because great ideas are meant to be shared. We'll be back soon with more story strategies and a few surprises. Until then, stay agile, stay curious, and remember, it's all about creating value. See you next time. Bye.
Bye bye. See you.